Welcome to this chess video, everyone. So here we're going to be discussing something that I see a lot of times from some really creative players. And actually, creativity, I believe, is the key to some really beautiful chess. So if you're a follower of Tal and how he sacrifices his pieces, how Paul Morphy always seems to develop so smoothly, or anything else that's related to what you consider beautiful, I believe that this video should be able to help you play this within your own games. So let's get started with it. So this first puzzle here we have from two grandmasters playing, and with this game, white is slightly higher rated, and in the real game, what black ended up playing was knight to e4, kicking away the white queen, and although they had an equalish position from here, they ended up losing the game. Nothing too extraordinary, fairly normal situation. However, if you're a really creative player, you might start noticing certain elements that kind of gets you thinking in a different direction. This puzzle is actually from a famous book. It's from a guard's calculation book. So the very key element here in this position that I noticed was white's queen is very vulnerable. And I think most people, if they don't notice that, they just look for a way to maybe advance, maybe a way to attack the queen, kind of like this knight move does. But it kind of misses the mark, because really, if we can do something about this queen, the fact that it's so far into our territory, we might be able to get a better position, or at least more tactical ideas that helps us, because of our creativity. And so I noticed this queen does not have too many escape squares. And I looked at a few moves initially. One of my candidate moves was like rook to e6, how to kick the queen, very similar to the knight move we saw in the game. And I also looked at a few other things, but it seemed like the queen was always escaping along this diagonal, and I wasn't really trapping it, wasn't really making much progress. And so then that's when it occurred to me that if I were to have something on this square, it would be like an interference, and then the queen couldn't actually escape. And so, of course, if I were to play like knight, well, that's really no good because the queens can just trade, and, that's really nothing. But then that's when I realized that actually I can play a really cool idea, and it is the solution to the puzzle, which is this really cool rook to e5 move. And the idea is that straightforward. We realized that the queen was in a vulnerable situation, and now we're just playing basically to force to trap it. There isn't really much they can do to stop knight to e8, and the white queen is in a lot of trouble. Now, how this could continue would be something like they would take, we would play knight back, and then the queen is going to have to give itself up because it had no legal squares to go to. And so everything will trade down, and although there is compensation for the queen, and the position's roughly equal, I'd say black is slightly better, they're up a pawn, and the fact that, white has lost their queen, I think gives black a little bit more practical chances to actually win this game. I mean, for example, already we have this knight potentially coming in, advancing into their position. So some things that definitely white has to be on the lookout for. So really, none of this would have been possible if in the initial position here, we hadn't noticed how vulnerable the queen was. And I think it is really these key observations added with creativity and calculating a little bit deeper that is going to help most people start to find these really beautiful ideas that quite literally people are not looking for. There's no way that you would have found a move like this if you weren't considering rook to e5. And that's not the most natural candidate move in the world for most people, but for me it actually stood out, and I ended up solving this puzzle correctly in just about 1 or 2 minutes. And so now here is the next puzzle, which is very similar in the fact that we have creativity as the key element here that we're looking for to help us find these really beautiful moves, but nothing else is really similar to the last puzzle. Now in the real game here, white played a mistake and really blew an opportunity that could have been much better. So right now black is up material, and white has to do something right away, and there's actually only one move that really keeps the advantage, and it's a really pretty one. And if you don't find this move, things are roughly about equal, or black is slightly better. Now in the real game, they played probably the second best move, and it's about equal. Their idea was they played rook to a8, noticing the weak back rank. And you can see that this is not really the best move here. Black can bring their bishop back and block, and they really don't have much. Like, you could take the knight, but then here, black actually has a really cool idea where they can just move their queen to c6. And even if you trade, there isn't really much here. The real game did continue this way with queen d3, king e7, and the position's about equal. So it's nothing really too special, and the game went on. But what else can we do? The idea is knight captures e4. And this is more important that you do it in this move order and not the rook check, and we'll see why very shortly. Now, of course, most people would never be looking at this knight move, because, of course, if you play this knight move, well, then you are sacrificing your queen. And most people don't even consider queen sacrifices that often, unless they see, like, a forced checkmate. And more often than not, there isn't going to be that there, and so most people are not going to be looking at these candidate moves. So the reason this is good is because when you sacrifice your queen, now we play rook to a8 check. And the big difference here is when the bishop comes back, now instead of trading on an f8, we have this really nice knight to f8 move. And this move, of course, would lead to checkmate if their king goes to corner, because, it would just be rook takes. Pretty much going to have to take, but when they take, now here comes the real clincher of this, which is bishop to h6. And now we can see there's no way to stop rook captures f8, and this will be checkmate in several moves. Black has no way to prevent this. But all of this happened just out of the blue, all because white was seeing the potential, in this puzzle, that they could sacrifice their queen and exploit black's weak back rank here. Creativity with that little bit of looking deeper, that little bit of calculation, that little bit of, it doesn't work in this line, but it might work in that line. And those ideas might really help out. So I hope this video was helpful for everyone. I will see you in the next chess video.